What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Terminator Training Show. I'm Kevin Smith. We are going to do a Q&A today. It is probably, when this comes out, just after 4th of July. So hopefully everyone had an awesome 4th of July. I also do have a 4th of July sale going on all my products. They are 30% off with the code USA30. Everything that is on the website, so 7 programs plus my soft recovery guide ebook, all 30% off. That goes until the 6th at midnight. So end of the day, 11:59 p.m. on Sunday the 6th. So if you're listening to this the day or the day after it comes out, then you should be able to act on that if you're interested in getting yourself a program. I am recording this before the 4th of July, but I am planning on going to my buddy's lake house tomorrow for some good times. I have been playing quite a bit of golf lately. I have pretty much taken, I've talked about this somewhat recently, but I've taken a few years off, mostly off from golf, playing a couple times per year, honestly. I've played more in the last 3 weeks than I've played in the last 3 years combined. So I am pretty excited to get back into it. I do get like kind of obsessive about stuff, especially if it's something I used to be really into and kind of just fell out of touch with it for a while. And now I'm getting back into it, and that is golf for me. I would say the first couple rounds that I came back, and this is for anyone interested in golf, I won't spend too much time on it, but there is a golf question here that I will answer. But anyway, first couple rounds, I was shooting in like the mid to high 80s. And now 3 or 4 rounds in a row, I've shot under 80. So 77, shot a 79 yesterday at one of the more difficult courses I've played in a while. And I was pretty proud of that. And that was after a really, really bad start too. I kind of turned it around on the back 9. I had 3 birdies in a row. 2 of them were tap-ins. That one was like a really lucky shot. I just kind of sculled it from a really, really awkward lie. The course I played at, you could hit like a perfect drive and be in the fairway, and the ball is still either way below or way above your feet. So it just makes that second shot difficult, even though it's in the short grass. And I kind of sculled a 9-iron. The ball was like well above my feet, probably around knee level. And I sculled a 9-iron, and it ended up working out really, really well. Tap in. And I also got an 8 on a par 5, a triple bogey on the back 9, and still shot even par. So that was a PR for me. Not a PR score. I've shot lower than that before. But the fact that I got an 8 on the scorecard and still shot under 80, and an 8 on the back 9 and still shot even par on the back 9. I was pretty pumped about that. But that's golf. The really good holes, the really good shots keep you coming back. The bad holes, like an 8 on a par 5, are a little bit rough, tough to swallow, especially when you're having a really good back 9 and a solid round. But hey, that's why they make birdies, and that's why they make eagles, and that's why, you know, they make bogeys and double bogeys, because you have bad shots, you have good shots, and you either get crushed by the bad shots or you capitalize on the good shots. So anyway, enough about that. Let's hop into today's questions. This is from Instagram. If you want your question answered in the future, give me a follow, Terminator_training. Every other week at this point, I will do a Q&A, and you can ask me whatever you want. I don't get to all of them. I just get way more than what I could answer in a reasonable length episode. But I try to choose some of the best ones. This one is a little bit short-handed just because I posted my Q&A like an hour and a half ago. So I don't have the full gamut of questions yet, but I've got plenty, and I'll go over those, and then I'll also refresh it part of the way through and see if there's some other good ones, and we'll kind of go from there. So let's start with a pretty simple, easy one. Is Jackazel 2.0 a good program for tactical athletes to follow? Yes, it is literally mainly intended for tactical athletes. It's how I trained through a lot of my career. Jackazel original, and later in my career when I wanted a little bit more longevity friendliness and not to beat myself up quite as much, and I didn't really care about the power lifts as much, I started to move away from going like really heavy in the squat, bench, deadlift. Honestly, I started to go away from doing squat, bench, and deadlift overall. I used machines and other pieces of equipment, specialty bars, mostly for that later in my career after I turned 30-ish. But Jackazel 2.0 is a little bit more joint friendly, a little bit more longevity friendly, a little bit more of a full complete program, whereas Jackazel, the OG, is more of a power building and endurance program. But if you want a full explanation on all of my programs, especially Jackazel 1, 2, and the 2 and 5 mile, which are my most frequently asked about questions, go ahead and check out, I believe it's episode 170. That is where I go over all of them. So you can get a lot more details on that. But yes, it's absolutely built for tactile athletes. Next question, how long should someone train for selection and how many attempts before moving on? All right, so hopefully you only have to go once, but lots and lots of guys go more than once, and you can still become an excellent Green Beret if you go to selection more than one time. But I would say how long to train for it really, really depends on tons of different factors. It depends on if you're training like specifically for it, like your final push to SFAS, or if you're considering like your base build, your pre-SFAS specific base build to be part of that. Are you starting from scratch? Like you have no athletic bones in your body, you've never played anything, you've never really done any sort of training, or are you starting with a really good base, or are you maybe you're super strong, but you really suck at endurance, or vice versa. And so you need to build some of the things you're weaker at. So it really does depend. If you're generally fit, most guys, if they, maintain a solid overall general base of running specific fitness as well as strength, they do some calisthenics, things like that, but they're not anything crazy. They haven't done any specific SFAS prep training, but they have a solid foundation. You should need 8 to 16 weeks of selection specific prep to get there. Of course, that is assuming that you're within striking distance of all the standards. If you're nowhere near it, you might need a 16-week plus base build, or maybe you need a 6-month base build before you can get into that last 8 to 10 to 12 weeks of SFAS specific prep. Most of my clients, depending on how long we've been working together and depending on where they're at, usually I turn them into their SFAS specific phase, like very, very specific, only really training for the demands of SFAS, not really training for general fitness. I usually do that around the 8 to 10 week mark, depending on the person. Some guys 12. My SFAS program is 12 weeks because that's, I would say, about the average. But you definitely don't, and this is a mistake a lot of people make, perpetual selection preppers. They'll just prep for selection for a year, like follow specific SFAS prep programs, or maybe the same program over and over again, or maybe multiple different programs over and over again for way too long. They'll do it over and over, and doing it for too long typically results in hitting points of diminishing return at best. So you just stop really adapting the way you want to adapt, and your fitness kind of stalls out. Your SFAS specific fitness, your running, your rucking, your general strength, things like that. Or very common case scenario and a worse case scenario than hitting points of diminishing return is you hurt yourself, because training for SFAS is not very longevity friendly. You're doing a lot of running, a lot of ruck running, a lot of lifting. It's just a lot of training, and a lot of it's impactful. And ideally, you just want to train for it one time and go once and get it knocked out. To kind of go back to your question, if that doesn't work and you don't make it and you get invited back, which is pretty common as long as you do decently and you show them something, like you're probably going to be a potential candidate in the future if you work on some stuff, then of course you're going to have to do it again. But that's not the goal. How many times should you attempt it? I don't know. That's totally up to you. Like, if you really, really want it, I would attempt it as many times as you possibly are allowed to attempt it. But that's not really up for me to decide, and it really just depends on what you want to do with your life, and of course, your results at your first attempt or your second attempt, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the way I would lay it out. I have several episodes on selection prep. Of course, I talk about it in pretty much every episode, but I have one episode, and I believe it's episode 81. It's either 81 or 85, and that's only on audio, by the way. That was before I started doing video podcasts, but you can look for that. It's how long to train for SFAS based on your genetic background, based on, I basically broke guys into like common avatars for backgrounds and where their fitness levels would generally be. And I talked about how to train for each of those avatars. So you can check that out. That'll get into more specifics as far as how long to prep. but those are my general guidelines. Next question, do you have any plans for OSIT specifically to increase pull-ups? No, I don't have any OSIT plans yet. However, that is in the queue for a future program. I would expect to have that out definitely within the next year. It's a kind of a hot topic. A lot of people want something like that. It is very difficult to program because everyone's going to have different access to different things. You might luck out and get there and your barracks has all the equipment, not all the equipment you need, but sufficient equipment like actual weights and a bench and racks and things like that. I have heard of something similar to that, but your bay may only just have maybe some kettlebells, maybe some dumbbells. Your bay may not even have anything. I don't really know exactly what each of the bays look like or barracks. So it is kind of difficult to write a program for the masses when I just don't know what people are going to have access to. But pull-ups, if you want to get better at pull-ups, I would go back and listen to my last episode. I think it is 172. That's on audio and video, and it's out on both. And I go pretty in-depth on how to improve your pull-ups. So definitely check that out. But OSIT program should be a thing in the somewhat near future. It's not next, but it is kind of coming up because I want to help guys out at OSIT. Even if it's not perfect, you definitely can do at least a little bit to maintain your fitness. You're not going to maintain all of it. If you go into OSIT super fit, you're not going to maintain all of it, but you can do some damage control by training intelligently. And so I'll work on a blueprint for you guys to use in the future. Next question, ETA on the new Ruck and Run program later this month. It should be out by the end of July. And when it's coming out, you'll definitely know about it if you follow me anywhere, either Instagram, if you listen to the show, if you follow me on YouTube, whatever it is. I will make that announcement, also newsletter, things like that. So it is, like I was just saying, it was very difficult for me to program for OSIT just because of the nuances and the different access to different things and different people. But this program, because it is going to be very versatile, it can be used for many different selection preps. It's more of like a choose your own adventure. So lots of the training days have multiple different training options, different types of conditioning, even different types of lifting, depending on what you're training for. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's quite difficult for me to put it all together in a way that's actually going to benefit everyone, regardless of where they're going, and put it all together in one program that isn't confusing for the person following the program. I'm taking all the confusing stuff and dealing it with it myself, so that when you open the program and you know what you're prepping for, you're not confused. You just know exactly the route to follow. So needless to say, that's a lot of moving pieces, and it is pretty tough to get perfectly dialed in, but we're getting there, and it's getting pretty damn close. And we have a goal. I say we because my wife works for the company now officially, and she helps me quite a bit behind the scenes. She's going to make the program look nice and things like that. And we are working hard on it. Should be out in the next few weeks, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Next question. Can I do tempo runs on a treadmill during the Phoenix summer? No, you're not allowed to. You have to do them outside. I would wait till it's like 1 or 2 p.m. and go do your tempo runs just in the sunniest possible spot. Ideally, don't hydrate, don't fuel well going in, and that's going to be kind of your best bet going about those. Just kidding. You can do whatever you want. You absolutely can do whatever you want. Can you do tempo runs inside on a treadmill when it's brutally hot out? I would say not only can you, but that would probably be a better option than just grinding through it in 110 plus degree heat in most cases. Now, if you're training for an event that's going to take place in really hot weather, first off, go and listen to my heat training episode. I think that's 167 or something like that. Just type in heat training on my YouTube channel or on my Spotify, and you should be able to find it. That will give you some really good guidance on how to do it, how to manage training in the heat versus training indoors, things like that. But if you are prepping for something that's going to take place in hot weather, I would definitely do some of your training, some of your run training outside. Does it have to be your tempo runs? Not necessarily, but occasionally doing some more higher intensity work, even when it's hot out, especially if you're prepping for something that's going to be highly intense and in the heat, would be a good idea. But that doesn't mean you should do all of them, all of your intense high quality sessions like your repeats and your tempo work in the heat. In fact, you should probably do most of them not in the heat. Even though it does suck running on a treadmill, it's not super enjoyable. You're going to get better speed adaptations, and it's going to be less of a stressor on your overall body if you do them inside, just because that heat adds a whole different factor to the difficulty, the perceived difficulty of the workout. Even the objective metrics like your heart rate, things like that are going to be higher. And it's just going to take you longer to recover. And also, you are either going to not be able to run the tempo pace that you would like to relative to, what you're training for, because it's hot and you are doing the right thing by dialing back the intensity a little bit, so you're not just dug into this super deep recovery hole. Or you are still going to run those paces, but instead of a tempo run usually being a 7, maybe an 8 RPE at the most, that tempo run's going to be a 9.5, 10 RPE, just because you tried to hit your paces, and maybe you did hit your paces, but it's just way more of a stressor on the body. And so it's going to interfere and detract from recovery, overall recovery from your run training, your overall training, because you just went too hard in the heat. So yes, you absolutely can. And I would say it's probably a good idea. And not just if you live in the Phoenix, but if you live anywhere where it's just brutally hot and it's kind of stupid to train outside, especially intense stuff outside, then doing it on the treadmill is a totally fine option. Next question, full golf bag tour. Yeah, hell yeah. Okay, this will be quick because I know probably most people are not golf bag fans, but I have recently gotten a new driver and new full set of irons. So 4-iron to gap wedge. And let's see. So my new driver is the Titleist GT2 with a really nice shaft that set me back quite a bit. I'm not sure exactly what type of shaft it is, but it is, for a while I was swinging a stiff shaft, and my club head speed is such that I need a super stiff shaft or an extra stiff shaft. And so I got that, and I got a fitted driver to my typical ball flight. I usually hit like a high fade. Occasionally I can hit a draw, but usually like a high fade. And if I mishit it, it goes from a high fade to a straight up slice off the tee. And ever since getting my new driver, I've had it for about 2 weeks, and I've used it for about 5 rounds of golf and gone to the range a couple times, and it is like night and day difference. My swing is a lot better than it was when I was first starting the season, of course, but the driver is just a huge, huge factor because I hit it long, and sometimes I struggle with hitting it straight. So if I can hit it long and straight, and I'm hitting this one longer than my other driver too, then I am setting myself up for success. My irons are P790s, TaylorMade P790s. And then I've had the same 3-wood. It's a TaylorMade M2. I've got a 4-iron hybrid that is a Callaway. And then I've got a 56-degree Titleist and a 60-degree Callaway wedge and a Meriden putter. So that's the golf bag tour. I'm probably going to go get fitted for a 3-wood here soon. And I might also maybe upgrade my hybrids. I alternate between, if I'm playing just by myself and I'm okay with having an extra club in the bag, I have a 3-iron and a 4-iron hybrid. And I have my 4-iron that I don't hit as well, which is pretty typical for amateur golfers. But that gives my bag 15 clubs. So if I am playing like in a tournament or playing legit where people care about how many clubs I have, then I usually just take the 3-iron hybrid out, but I might go and get some new hybrids at some point and a new 3-wood, and then I'll be pretty much stocked. I'm pretty happy with my wedges already. So it definitely has made a big difference. My yardage is a little longer on all my irons, which is something to figure out, but also they're just more forgiving and I feel great with them. So thanks for asking, and I'm looking forward to going and getting better as the summer progresses. Next question, how would you go about building social confidence for SUF? Talk shit till failure for optimal gains? I love it. That's definitely what I would do. Just go talk shit to everyone. The more random and the less you know someone, just random strangers, and the more shit you talk to them, the better. Because you're just going to be able to deal with whatever, and you're going to piss a lot of people off. But no, just kidding. As far as social confidence, I'm guessing you kind of mean being more comfortable in your own skin, being more likable, being more charismatic, getting people to kind of buy into what you're telling them, or just making people feel more important and well respected, which is really, really important. I talk about this all the time, but it's really important in SF. And some people really just have natural ability to be super charismatic and very personable. Other people, including myself, really need to work at it. And although your talk shit till failure for optimal gains thing is kind of a joke, it's not that far off, minus the talk shit part. Going and talking to people that you don't know, going and intentionally starting conversations with strangers is a great one. That's something that I have had to do over time and like force myself to do and intentionally do, because it just gets you used to talking to people you don't know. It gets you used to multiple different personalities. It gets you used to hearing responses and hearing what another person says that you may or may not relate to. And it also just gets you more comfortable with going and talking to someone, even if you are a little bit nervous for it, or if you don't know the person, you don't know how they're going to react. And lastly, not everyone's going to be cool with having a conversation with you. If you're going to the grocery store, or you're having a conversation with a cashier or something like that, once in a while, you might get either like ignored or told to fuck off, not necessarily with those words, but the person may just not be into it for whatever reason. And it kind of gets you used to being okay with rejection, because that is just part of life. And a lot of people like fear rejection, which is usually why people fear starting these conversations, because they don't want to get like rejected or thought of as a weirdo or thought of as annoying or something like that. And most people aren't going to do that. They're not going to think of you that way. Honestly, a lot of people are totally willing to talk. They just don't instigate it themselves. And so they're very happy to carry a conversation with you. Other people are just not into it. Maybe just that day they're not having a good day, or maybe just they just don't like talking to people. And either of those are valuable, because if someone's into having a conversation, then you get to practice having a conversation. If they're not, then you get to practice being rejected, and it'll prove to you that the world's not going to end, and honestly nothing bad is going to happen. You just move on to the next. So that is one huge one. And just being more mindful of it when you're in any sort of social situation. So whether it's people you know, people you don't know, people you kind of know, people you really like, whatever it is, when you're going into these situations, you can kind of mentally prepare for it. What am I going to say? Who am I going to talk to? Not necessarily what am I going to say. You don't want to script stuff, but like, who am I going to talk to? What am I going to work on? What type of social skill can I work on tonight, or skills? And then after you go and you do your thing, whether it's a get together or whatever, and afterwards you give yourself a little bit of a review, or maybe your spouse is with you. And my wife and I do this sometimes too. She kind of knows that I like to go to these things and work on them, because now I don't have the blanket or the cover of alcohol for giving me a little bit more confidence and letting me be a little bit looser in these conversations, because I don't drink anymore. So now I actually like have to think it through, take it seriously. I have to deal with maybe feeling a little bit tentative or apprehensive to talk to someone or say something. And because I don't have the booze, I can actually afterwards look back on it and be like, okay, what did I do well? What did I do poorly? It's just like anything you want to get better at. You want to kind of do a little bit of preparation. You want to learn about it. And by the way, I know I'm saying all this stuff. You got to learn about it first. So I would definitely read How to Talk to Anyone. I would definitely read The Charisma Myth. And I would definitely read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Those will give you a great foundation of basically everything I'm talking about, things to work on. But of course, just reading about it and knowing it is not enough. You actually have to go put your skills to practice, and you have to do a little bit of thought and reflection on what you did well, what you didn't do well, and what you still need to improve, and kind of go from there. So that is some of the main things I would do. If it's more of a fear of like public speaking, you can look into things like Toastmasters. You can look into things like improv. That'll get you just more comfortable speaking in front of strangers and actually not necessarily having a conversation. Well, improv is more conversationalist, sort of, but Toastmasters is you get up in front of everyone and you give a presentation and they grade you. So that will get you a lot more confident in that. And also, even if you, whether you do those things or not, if you have some sort of presentation or you have some sort of brief, if you're in group or you're in the military and you have to talk to important people and you know you get nervous with those things, preparation actually preparing and practicing and going through what you're going to be saying over and over and over again until it becomes automatic. Not necessarily memorizing word for word, although that may sometimes be appropriate. You don't have to memorize it word for word, but you really want to know it super well so that you can carry the flow of it, and you can look confident. And when you look confident and you don't say anything crazy and you are not stumbling over your words and you're not just clearly looking really meek and not very capable, whether you are capable of doing the thing you're briefing or not, whether your team is, whether you are, if you're not good at conveying and simplifying what you're going to do and you don't say it in a confident, assertive, and high presence manner, then whoever's listening and whoever's maybe even listening and deciding whether you guys can do it or not is not going to have a really good warm and fuzzy about it. They're going to be like, well, this guy does not seem sure of himself, even if you are really, really good at what you're doing. Of course, briefing is not the same thing. Like, you don't necessarily have to be an amazing briefer or an amazing public speaker in order to be an amazing SF guy. But it certainly helps, and it certainly helps you increase your chances or your team's chances of being able to go and display what you're really, really good at, which is not briefing. It's whatever you're briefing, the mission, the training event, or whatever it may be. That is the bread and butter, but you got to be allowed to do it first. And if you just are a soup sandwich when you're briefing, or if your whole team is, or whatever, then maybe some Toastmasters might be a good thing for you and maybe some other guys on your team, or identifying that as a team and practicing together and preparing better for these types of things, because it is important. So that should give you a good little foundation. Those books are huge. And then going out and practicing it is money, and just continuing to do it and being okay with rejection and being okay with maybe a little bit of awkwardness sometimes. It's not going to hurt you. It is just part of life, and you really can't get better at it if you don't do it. So you got to go do it. Next question. Ruck speed technique. I'm feeling like that's the limiting factor with pace for me. So usually it's not technique. Usually it's a fitness thing, because rucking technique, there are so many different ways to skin it. And it's the same with running. If you look at the top 20 runners in any big race, you go to the Boston Marathon and you look at the top 20 people running at the very front. So the best runners in the world, hands down. All of their techniques, all their mechanics are going to look slightly different. Some people quite a bit different. And they're all still the best runners in the world. So that should show you that there's a lot of individual variance with running. And rucking's kind of the same. Rucking for speed, of course, is different than just throwing a ruck on and going for a walk, or going and doing land nav, where you kind of have to be a little more accurate, under control, not super fast. If you're getting timed on a 12-miler or whatever distance, then yeah, speed is important, and you want to be able to run fast with a ruck on. I don't care what anyone says. Going to selection and intentionally not running on the gated rucks is a massive mistake, and also intentionally not doing any ruck running in training so that you can make adaptations and prepare your body to be able to ruck run fast on gated rucks is also a mistake. Of course, there's nuance to it. You don't always have to go out and ruck run. You shouldn't ruck run just indefinitely, but there's definitely a time and place for it. So technique, I would say the main thing to focus on is increasing your cadence. Most people have lower cadences and they overstride, and their feet are landing kind of out in front of them. This is walking, but even more so with running and trotting and things like that. So when your cadence is low and you're therefore overstriding, your feet are landing out in front, you are doing two things that are not great. One, you're increasing the impact. It's almost like putting a brake on every single time. So you're increasing the impact forces that go up through your body with every single step. And, you know, if you're doing a 12-mile ruck, that's a lot of freaking steps, and therefore a lot of stress on the joints and connective tissue. Additionally, because you're putting a little brake on every single time, you have to overcome that. It's almost like riding down the highway at 65, and then you decide to take your other foot and hover over the brake and then maybe push it down a little bit. So it's not very good for the vehicle. You're going to slow yourself down. You're making the vehicle work harder because you are pressing the gas, going fast, but also pressing a little bit of a brake. And although it's a little different in running and rucking because it's every step. So you like basically have a brake every time you step, and then you overcome it. Then you step, have a brake, overcome it. It is still way less efficient. And so you're going to be slower, and or you're going to work harder to run the pace that you want to run. And it's going to be more fatiguing, and you're just going to have less potential overall. So low efficiency, higher injury risk or higher overuse issue risk from overstriding. So what I would focus on mostly is increasing your cadence, getting a higher cadence. There's no perfect rucking cadence. It's not like everyone should shoot for like 180, just like running. Rucking is a little bit more gray, but regardless, whatever your cadence is at now, if you increase it by 10 while continuing to train and, do the right things outside the gym and get fitter, you're going to be faster, almost unquestionably. Whereas some people will try and overstride. They'll try and increase their stride length, and what that does is usually just exacerbates the problem. And maybe their cadence is the same, but they're overstriding even more, and they may be going a little bit faster because stride length times cadence is speed. But if you are trying to increase your stride length, you might be going a little faster, but it's still not the same efficiency that you could be doing. So what you want to focus on is higher cadence. What that'll do is allow your foot to land under midline, generally under midline, and you won't have to overcome that braking force every time, and it'll be lower impact. What I really recommend to start out before you start like ruck running as if you are getting timed on it is to get into some shuffling, or you can call it trotting. Ruck shuffling is you're not going to go as fast as you will if you're, full on running, but you're going to go faster shuffling than you will walking. And it's not as impactful as full on ruck running, primarily because it's a kind of a good way to teach high cadence, because you're shuffling. You're basically keeping your feet underneath you with every time your foot hits the ground, it's hitting underneath you, and you're doing more choppy, not necessarily choppy, but just fast, rapid, continuous steps. So again, there's no perfect ruck form or ruck technique that works for everyone. Honestly, there's lots of different people that ruck really, really well that don't look the same when they're rucking. When I'm rucking, it looks a lot like I look when I'm running, just a little bit slower, and the stride length's a little bit lower, and the cadence is a little bit lower just because you have that extra weight on your back. But it doesn't look all that different. So if you can kind of mimic it or mirror it up to your running technique, assuming you don't have soup sandwich running technique, then that might be a good idea. But it's just going to look and feel a little bit different because you got a 50, 60 pound ruck on your back. So that's always a factor. The thing is too, a lot of people just overthink these things, and there's almost no chance that the only thing that's holding you back is that you don't have the technique down. It could be one of the things holding you back, but even if your technique still continues to suck, you just get fitter. You haven't reached, nobody listening to this, including me, has ever reached their overall rucking fitness potential. You would have to do years and years and years of very, very specific ruck training and take things super seriously to reach your true potential, your true fitness potential. I cannot get any faster, no matter what I do. So even though your form may be limiting you, even though you may have been trying for a long time to get faster and so on and so forth, getting fitter, continuing to train consistently and progressively is always number one. I would think about that way sooner than I would think about trying to get this like perfect rucking technique. Next question, tips on returning to running performance post-marathon, i.e. weights, running volume. Yeah, so it depends on how much the marathon destroyed you. A lot of people, depending on their abilities, depending on their running history, depending on how they trained up for that, and several other factors, can get back into running the following week. Do they need to, or should they? Maybe not. I would say if you go hard in a marathon, even if you did train really well for it, even if you are a very well-trained runner, which I'm guessing you're a little bit newer or a little bit less advanced just by the nature of the question. I'm guessing this is maybe your first marathon, which is totally fine. But if you have a good amount of running experience, a lot of guys get right back into running probably a few days after a marathon, assuming they're not injured or super banged up or things like that. If you did not train up the way that you maybe should have, and the marathon absolutely destroyed you and you feel like a truck ran over you for several days afterwards, then, well, that's a good lesson to train up more properly next time and maybe take it a little bit more seriously. But also, it is a good idea not to rush back into anything and just kind of take it easy, take it slow. Running a marathon, especially if you go hard and you try and get your best time, whether you trained up for it well or not, is just a stressful endeavor on the joints, connective tissue, nervous system. It's mentally stressful. So give yourself a little bit of a breather, I would say. Like, that's my strong recommendation, is to give yourself a little bit of a breather from at least impact. You can definitely get back into doing some conditioning. And I would say it's probably a solid idea to at least do some walking, do some non-impact stuff, maybe do some incline walking, mostly zone 2, even zone 1, just to kind of get your body moving again, but also without the higher impact that running yields. So you could start doing that a few days after. As far as lifting, you can get right back into lifting if you want. You don't necessarily have to, but the following week you can get back into lifting. Just keep it relatively light and keep it easy. Don't try and chase PRs. Don't try and take everything to failure, anything like that. I would work back into it for a couple weeks. And once you do start running, whether that's pretty soon after the marathon or whether you wait a little while and kind of let your body recover, let your mind recover, let your nervous system recover, you kind of want to think of it as like a rebuilding a base phase. However, it does not have to be as long. So, hopefully you went into the marathon with a solid foundation of running, like you had a good amount of mileage going in. I would say at least, hopefully, like 40 miles per week, maybe 50, maybe 60, whatever it is for you. If you want to do really well in a marathon, you're going to need more than that, but you can get by on 40 miles a week. You may not be hitting PRs, but you can definitely get by on 40. But you don't necessarily have to go as if you have never run before and build your base up for months and months and months and start at like 4 miles a week and just continue to add small amounts. You can start a little bit higher. You can progress a little bit faster, and you can start doing speed work a little bit sooner, depending on what you want to do. If you don't have any races coming up, I would spend a good amount of time just doing easy runs and touching on speed with strides and pickups and maybe some hill repeats before you get back into doing like 400s, 800s, tempo work and things like that. If you have some other type of run in the future, which I'm guessing you do because you want to get back to your running performance, then you can start that a little bit sooner. But really listen to your body, erring on the side of caution, not on the side of maybe pushing the limits and walking the line and maybe I can do this. I don't know. When you say maybe I can do this, I don't know. That's usually if you're a type A individual, which most people are listening to this. Usually that's a good sign not to do it, or to do maybe a half of what you think you maybe can do, or a third or 2/3, whatever. So that's the way I would approach it. It really just depends on tons and tons of factors for me to give you a specific answer. But if you're feeling pretty good, you don't have to wait super duper long. Some people will tell you to wait forever. I really don't think that's necessarily the case, unless of course you're hurt, or if you just went way too hard, or if you just didn't train up well for it and therefore the marathon just destroyed you. Then you want to give it some time and use that as a lesson for next time. Next question, is there a significant difference between regular treadmill and the curved self-propelled one? Significant? It depends on what we want to define significant as, but yes, there is definitely a measurable, noticeable difference. If you've done enough running outside on treadmills, on curved treadmills, you probably by now have found that it is harder to maintain certain paces that you can maintain outside or on a flat treadmill. It's harder to maintain those paces on the curve runner because it's self-propelled. It's almost like running a little bit uphill, which has pros and cons. Some of the cons to curve runners, it's a little bit different mechanics to regular running, whether it's on a treadmill or outside. It is also quite boring, like it's not super enjoyable. And one of the biggest cons is that it does not really compute very well to outdoors and treadmills, regular treadmills. Like the pacing is very, very difficult, if not impossible to calibrate. Even regular treadmills, the pace you're running on a regular treadmill will not transfer 1-to-1 to outdoors. There's just way more variables outside, and also no treadmill that I am aware of is perfectly calibrated to outdoor running. And even if it was perfectly calibrated to outdoor running in like perfect conditions, the conditions outside are not in your control, and they're always going to be a little bit different. There's going to be some hills, there's going to be some breeze, there's going to be different weather conditions, and so on and so forth. And also, you are the only person in control of whether you go faster or slower. Whereas if you set the treadmill to a certain speed, it can be almost easier for a lot of people to just stick to that speed, because no matter what, you have to either you run it, or you have to get off the treadmill. So that's kind of the main difference between treadmills and outside. But the curve runner is self-propelled, so it's similar to running outside in that regard, but it's different enough to where it's going to be harder for you to run. Like, for example, if you were to run an all-out 400 outside, and then you were to run a 400 as hard as you can on the curve runner, you're probably going to be slower on the curve runner. You're probably going to get a slower time, unless, of course, you're running like into the wind or something like that, because it's a little bit harder. It's almost like running a little bit uphill. So I am okay with guys using curve runners if that's either all they have, or if they're totally aware of the differences and they go mostly off RPE and not pace. That's one of the big things not to do, especially if you're doing repeats or tempo work or speed work, any type of training like that. If you're going off pace, it's not going to be a one-to-one thing at all. You're going to want to go mostly off RPE, especially the first time you do it. If you're using the same exact machine every single week and you know the discrepancies between outside and that machine, then yeah, you can use a pace range. Just try and get better every week or every other week, whatever, however often you're doing it. But if it's like your first time and say you're trying to run 400s at 130, because that's what you usually do outside, and you run a couple 400s at 130 on the curve runner, you're like, why is this so much harder? Well, that's why, because it is harder. It's harder to maintain those paces. So nothing wrong with using it periodically, as long as you're aware of the differences, and as long as you're aware that if you only do your training on the curve runner, you're going to have a little bit of a mechanical deficiency or a mechanical discrepancy as far as your running technique is concerned when you get outside and you actually have to run outside. But as long as you're aware of those things, not a huge deal, and definitely worse options. And honestly, sometimes it can be a good option because it's a little bit less impact. It's almost like running a little bit uphill. Next question, how to break the 30 pull-up plateau without risking overtraining. So go back and listen to my last episode on pull-ups. I think it was the first question. It's one of the early questions. I'm not exactly sure what question it was, but anyway, what I would ask myself if I were you is why you want to be able to do more than 30 pull-ups. Unless you're training for some sort of pull-up competition, like one set max, there are no military requirements. There are no, I don't think like any competition or any sport or anything like that requires you to do more than 30 pull-ups. So I'm all for chasing like big pull-up numbers. Absolutely. Great idea. But do you want to really put the amount of effort in, which is going to be lots and lots of effort if you're already at 30? If you're at 5 or 7 or 9, you'd be able to increase your pull-ups pretty easy if you just did the right things in training. Listen to the last episode. Quite a bit. You could bring them up 4 reps, 5 reps, 6 reps, 10 reps for some people. But if you're at 30, that's very, very high. That's a lot of pull-ups for anyone. That's not even a relatively high amount of pull-ups. That's a lot of pull-ups just in general. And the amount of work you'll have to do to increase them and improve them on pull-ups themselves is exponentially higher than someone going from 5 to 10 or 5 to 12. So just remember that and kind of ask yourself, do I really think it's worth it to get past the 30 pull-up plateau? Rarely do people hit 30 and still want to improve their pull-ups a little bit more. I'm not saying you're wrong to want to, but it's going to come at a trade-off of potential other fitness progress. It's going to come at a potential trade-off of shoulder issues. It's going to potentially come at a trade-off of being super frustrated because you might do all this work and get 1 extra rep or 2 extra reps, or sometimes maybe you do all this work and some days you can't even do 30, because that's just kind of how pull-ups are. So I'm not necessarily going to get into how to break past the 30 pull-up plateau for you, other than the fact that go listen to the last episode and see if some of those things ring a bell. I go through quite a few different ways that you can kind of slice it as far as pull-up improvements, and just know that you're going to have to work extra diligently at pull-ups. You're probably going to have to do an extra day of pull-ups. You're probably going to have to really take pull-up programming super seriously. And if you do the things I talked about in the last episode, or at least the thing that rings the bell the most, or things that ring the bell the most, as far as like what you're not doing in training or how you could train differently, just know that you may have to do it for longer, and you may not really get the same results as someone who is doing way fewer pull-ups and wants to get to a moderate number. So the fact you can do 30 pull-ups, you are in a rare air. There are not a lot of people in the world that can do 30 dead hang, full range of motion pull-ups. There are plenty of people who can do lots of quote-unquote pull-ups, 30 quote-unquote pull-ups. But if you're doing these full range of motion and you're at 30, like, I would not be that mad. So just kind of comes down to determining whether it's really worth it for you or not. Next question, any way to rope BJJ into your programs or just a complete no-go? It's not a complete no-go at all, but it really just depends on lots and lots and lots of things that I don't really know, and I can't really give you an answer for, because all my programs are different. Some of my programs are like 3 days a week, just lifting. Some of my programs are hybrid programs, 5-6 days a week, multiple days with double sessions. Other of my programs are specific to something like 2 and 5 mile SFAS. So it depends what program you're following. It also depends on how seriously you want to take BJJ and how often you do BJJ and how much it takes away from your overall training, like how much it eats into your recovery. So if you're doing BJJ once a week, you probably can follow my programs to a T, any of them, and be fine. If you're doing BJJ twice, 3 times, 4 times a week, that's when you'll have to start considering like what's more important to you, BJJ or making these fitness gains. Not that BJJ is not going to enhance your fitness overall. Like, of course, you're going to get great fitness from doing the BJJ, but also with that, it's going to be a stressor on the body. So it's going to take some recovery away from whatever else you're doing. So I would need to know a lot more. I'd need to know how many hours per week you're spending doing BJJ. I would need to know how many times a week you're doing it. I would need to know what goal is more important to you, whether it's BJJ or the program. And then, of course, I would need to know what program you're following. And I would probably need to know a lot more about your non-training activities, your sleep, your nutrition, how you're recovering, what your overall goals are, how developed you are, like how well developed you are in fitness as well as BJJ, and a lot of other nuances to give you a better idea of how I'd approach it, but definitely not a complete no-go. It just really depends on too many factors to tell you exactly what to do. Next question, what are some things that can keep you from getting invited back to SFAS besides VWing? VW, for those not aware, is voluntary withdrawal. And honestly, although when I went through, if you quit, you were not going to get invited back, you may actually be able to get invited back now if you quit. It's not going to be super quick. It's not going to be like as soon as possible or 6-month return like some guys get, but you may be able to get around it. But either way, don't even have that in your mind. Don't VW, don't quit. Why would you prepare for all that and go through all that just to quit and not give yourself any chance whatsoever? I know some people are still going to quit, but it just never really made any sense to me. Not to say that quitting some things is not a good idea, like quitting an addiction or something like that. That would be smart. But quitting something that you've worked your ass off and that you've always wanted to do, even if it's really, really hard, which it will be, and miserable, it doesn't last forever. You can get through it. It's not going to kill you. Just go and do it. That's my don't quit spiel. But other things that you can do not to get invited back, probably, I'm not exactly sure. I would say maybe like a serious integrity violation, like you lie about something or you sneak something in that you're not supposed to have there, or you talk shit to a cadre, or you show attitude or something to a cadre. That's probably not a good look. If you go and you just bomb out on the PT test on the first day, like you don't even come close, I'm not sure if they're going to invite you back, because I mean, that's literally just to get in the door. That's like to get your ticket. And if you're not ready for that, you're definitely nowhere near ready for actually selection. Like you should not have come. If you're anywhere near failing or not meeting the standards on the PT test, the very easiest, the absolute easiest physical event that you'll do there, then what do you expect to happen on the next ones? So I'm not sure if they'll invite you back if you don't do well in the PT test, but I personally don't think that people should be invited back if they can't even pass the PT test on day one. But that's just me, and I'm not in charge. So I'm not exactly sure, but I would go and not really worry about this type of stuff. I would just go and put your best foot forward, prepare as best you possibly can, go put in as much effort as you possibly can, have a good attitude, be a good dude, don't talk shit to the cadre, don't treat cadre like bros, don't lie, don't quit, that will set you up for the best possible outcome. Of course, there's lots that is not in your control or my control or really anyone's control that could happen. But that's the attitude and that's the mindset I'd go in with, not like, ooh, what can I do that will get me kicked out, but also how can I come back? Of course, not a lot of people think that way, but some people do go in with the wrong mindset in that they're thinking about all the ways not to fail, all the things not to do. And your brain is interesting because whatever you focus on, whether it is doing really, really well or doing really, really poorly or doing all these things or not doing all these things, whatever you have in kind of in your brain, in your mindset, that's where your focus is going to go. And that's more likely to happen. So going to selection with the mindset of I'm going to go crush it and give it my best effort and go as hard as I possibly can, regardless of what happens, that's the way to go about it. Not how can I like finagle my way into getting back to selection? Like what can I do and not do in order to get invited back? So hopefully that makes sense. Next question. Are you a boot/sneaker insert guy? Yeah, it's one of my favorite things on the planet. I have this entire collection actually of inserts, both for boots and sneakers, down in my garage. Maybe someday I'll do a full episode about that where I just take you guys through all of my inserts because I am a huge insert guy. No, just kidding. I personally am not. I've never used inserts in my life, never even tried them. I always just go with whatever comes with the shoe. Once in a while, depending on the shoe, I might take the insert out. Like I got some Vivos that have these little they're almost like corks from wine bottles that they use for inserts in the shoe. And I like to go very minimalist sometimes. So I'll just take those out and it's less thickness between my foot and the ground. But I've never felt the need to use them, so I don't use them. That being said, for some people, they can be very beneficial. Honestly, like game changers for some people. So if you're one of those people, then going and talking to a podiatrist and getting some recommendations from them and trying some things out might be a very fruitful thing for you. But I personally am not. And I also think that more people use them than actually need them. So again, this is like one of those little more minor things. Of course, if you have really serious foot problems or something like that, or you are just always banged up from running, rucking, and it is more structural, like genetic in the way that your body is built up, then maybe they can be great. But over-indexing these things and thinking that they're going to like make or break your chances, especially if you're not really someone that really needs them, maybe you can benefit a little bit from them, but they're not really big difference makers. Stressing over them in such a way that it like actually maintains and owns space between your ears is a waste of energy. So if you like them, absolutely. If you need them, absolutely. If a professional recommends them to you, absolutely. But I wouldn't stress over it too much. Next question. What exercises could you do to get better at carrying a 240 while having your ruck on? Oof, brutal. All right. So 240, for those who are not aware, is a heavy machine gun that lays down some serious firepower. And usually when you're traveling, you're doing some sort of military exercise or mission, or whether it's training or real life, there's a 240 gunner. And the 240 is, I don't even remember how much it weighs, but I want to say it's like 27 pounds. I could be way off on that, but it is significantly heavier than carrying a rifle or even carrying a SAW 249, which is also a machine gun, but a little bit lighter duty than a 240. So which exercises? There's no specific exercises I'd recommend. If you are doing that often, you're going to adapt to it. But also, if you just become better at rucking, I'm guessing you're going to be doing this while rucking. That was part of the question. So yeah, you're going to have a ruck on. So get better at rucking, get stronger, just generally stronger in the gym. And beyond that, it's mostly mental. If I walked into a gym and saw someone doing like 240 carrying specific exercises, I'd probably make fun of them, whether to their face or just in my head, because it's just, you don't have to get that specific. It's mostly meant, if you're fit enough to just walk and hold it and carry it, then beyond that, it's mostly mental. But of course, being stronger, being better at rucking, having better endurance are all great raw materials to be able to do this well. But there's no really specific exercise I would do. If your upper back is weak, which is the case for most military age males, then definitely build your upper back, build your lower back, lots of hinging, build your shoulders, your traps. That's part of your upper back too. and just get it better at rucking, get stronger, and continue to do the 240 carries, and you're just going to get better at it. And just remember that no matter what, even if you're in great shape, if you're carrying the 240 with a ruck on, especially if you're doing it for day after day after day or hour after hour, especially if you're in terrible terrain or you're like at ranger school, you're underfed, underslept, it's just going to suck. There's nothing fun about it. I don't care what you do in the gym. It's not fun. But then again, if you have the fortitude to just continue going, which you don't really have an option, you have to just continue carrying it, then you're going to be totally fine. It's okay to do things that suck. It's okay to do things that cause extreme discomfort. Of course, there's a fine line between doing dumb stuff and doing things that are tough but uncomfortable, but also not going to jack you up. And in this case, carrying a 240 while rucking is, once your baseline fitness needs are met, is mostly mental, and it's not going to jack you up that much. So that's how I'd approach it. Next question, any advice for ranger school regarding patrols? Yeah, so just know that no matter what, unless you're lucky and you're going on like the first day, whether it's mountain phase, Derby phase, Florida phase, if you're going on the first day, that's when guys are going to be most motivated and most willing to do what you tell them to do and most able to take your direction and actually do what you want them to do. Now, this sounds a little bit nuts, but until you've actually been to ranger school, you won't really understand just how much food and sleep deprivation and just general fatigue and high stress, how much of an effect that has on people's ability to do what they're capable of doing and their willingness to do what you want them to do. So guys will just kind of go and do their own things. It's similar. We kind of joke around and we say it's like similar to herding cats. You're just like trying to get guys to, at least for a few minutes when it's a really important part of the mission, to do what you want them to do, so that then they can just go and do whatever they want after. And you're going to feel it too. When you're not in leadership positions, you're going to feel like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. But you have to do that because you want guys in your platoon to pass. The more people in your platoon pass, the better. Even if you don't like the person, whatever, it's still advantageous for more guys to pass and get their goes, because it gives more people opportunities towards the end. Like guys who, for whatever reason, didn't get a go the first time, even if they're very deserving, especially if they're very deserving of getting a go or getting a passing grade. They call it a go, no go. But it gives them a chance at the end to go again because more guys have already gotten goes. So, if there's 8 guys that haven't gotten their goes yet, even though they've been assessed a couple times, and the rest of the platoon has already gotten them, then they can put all 8 guys on that last mission with hopes that they get a passing grade and they get to move on to the next. Whereas if there's 25 guys that still haven't gotten a go yet, which is very, very realistic in certain phases for certain platoons, including mine in Florida phase, then still only 8-ish guys are going to get that last look in order to hopefully pass. And the other, 17 guys aren't. So it's pretty advantageous to do the right thing when you get asked to do it, whether you want to do it, whether you're stressed out, hungry, tired, whatever, or not, you will be. And also, if you do good by whoever's in leadership and you listen to them and you do your job as a non-leadership guy, when you get to leadership, they're going to be more likely to look out for you and do the right things for you. So that's kind of the benefits of doing the right thing. As far as when you're in a leadership position, just being confident, being loud. They love when people are loud. If you don't have a man voice, definitely work on your man voice, like freaking loud, aggressive, violent. If you're loud, aggressive, and violent, and you don't do anything absolutely ridiculous, and you are on a lane that the cadre don't like really, really mess with you guys and like just make almost impossible scenarios, which does happen. I've experienced this in the past. But as long as it's relatively reasonable, the whole mission and the way that, cadre lay it out and things like that, the RIs, ranger instructors, and you're aggressive and loud and confident and violent with your actions, then you're probably going to get a go. They love seeing that shit, even if your tactics are not perfect. Honestly, Ranger School, yes, there are tactics involved, but you're not going to become a master tactician. You're just going to be good at getting people that don't want to do what they're doing to do exactly what you want them to do when you want to do them, in the quality and the efficiency and proficiency with which you want them to do it in. That was kind of a lot. But that is like the essence of Ranger School. It's not becoming this like amazing tactician. It's not like you're not going to be a professional at raids and ambushes. They're very, very basic, but you will be really good at leading people and, like I said, herding cats. So confidence, violence of action, aggressiveness, man voice, being a good dude when you're not in leadership, simplifying things, not trying to over-explain stuff to all your guys. Just tell them where you need them to go and what you want them to do while they're there, and some standards. So task, conditions, standards, and a timeline. Be back by this time or go get there by this time. That's like also the essence of Ranger School, is just giving people simple tasks and showing them how to do it, making sure they do it properly. You know, double checking or having someone go double check to make sure they're doing things properly. Because if you're a platoon sergeant or if you're a platoon leader, then you're kind of in charge, even though you'll have squad leaders that are doing their thing and you'll have team leaders that are helping the squad leaders out. You're still in charge of like the overall outcome. So even if one squad is just all ate up, like your security squad is all ate up, or your assault line squad is all ate up, then if you're the platoon sergeant or the platoon leader, even if you're not in charge of that small section, it's still going to fall back on you. So a lot of times missions will have most to all guys get goes, or most to all guys not get goes. And it's because it is a team. It's a team environment. Like, even if you are like the number one guy in charge, you still need your other guys to do well. And you need to make sure that your other guys do well, even if you're not in charge of that squad. So I realize everything I just said kind of makes it sound a little bit complicated and a little bit stressful and a little bit, whoa, this sounds like maybe it's going to be really difficult. It's really not. The difficult thing is the fact that you're sleep deprived, food deprived, stressed out about whether you're going to get a go or not. You don't want to be there. No one does. And you have to get a bunch of people who don't want to be there, that are stressed out and hungry and tired, to do what you need them to do when you need them to do it, and with enough quality to get the mission done, get the job done. So that's my best advice on that. Best of luck and go crush. Next question, we'll do 2 more, I would say. My grip is limiting my deadlifts by a lot. How to improve? All right, so if you can't grip your deadlifts, it is usually not because you have a grip problem. It's usually because either you're not leveraging certain types of grips, which I'll get into here in a second, or you are not using grip assistance. So if you're only doing double overhand deadlifts, so you're grabbing the barbell as if you were doing a bench press and you're pulling it, you are going to leave a lot of deadlift gains on the table because your grip is limiting you so much. So of course, you definitely want to work on your grip. I've talked about that endlessly a million times. Getting your grip stronger is a good idea, but you're probably not going to get your grip strong enough to where it can keep up with your entire posterior chain on a deadlift. You'll always be limited by your grip. Even if you're super freaking strong, you have an amazingly strong grip. Unless you're really, really weak at the deadlift, which would also be a problem, it's always going to be a factor, a limiter, a limiting factor. So you can circumvent that a few different ways. One, if you are training to be a power lifter or something like that, where grips or straps are not allowed, like lifting grips or lifting straps, then you can use the hook grip. That takes a little bit of time to break your thumb in, and most people just kind of avoid that. I personally love the hook grip. I started doing it a long time ago, and it is my go-to. I can grip basically no matter what. Grip is never going to be my limiter with the hook grip on a deadlift. It is still double overhand, but it is not a strong grip. It's a secure grip. You're using friction between your finger and your thumb in order to secure your grip around the bar. It's almost like you have built-in lifting straps into your hands. If you don't want to go that route, it takes several weeks to probably maybe a month or longer to get your thumbs to where you can kind of handle it without it being excruciatingly painful. Then you can go over under, or interlocking grip. One hand is facing away from you, or supine. The other hand is facing you, or prone. as if you were going double overhand, except the other one's facing out. That one is a much stronger grip than double overhand. The downsides to that one, if you always use the same hand facing out, same hand facing in, one of your shoulders is internally rotated, the other one is externally rotated, and it can result in imbalances if you do it for long periods of time. If you're a power lifter, you don't really care. Like, I would just practice mostly with the grip that you want to use. If you're not a power lifter and you like that grip, I would just alternate back and forth between, you don't have to do it every single set or anything like that, but maybe every workout, every time you do deadlifts in a training session, just alternate what grip you use. You could do it every set, but that would kind of throw me off a little bit. I'd rather just do it every workout. But also, another downside to that, beyond imbalances, is the lift becomes a little less safe for that externally rotated arm or the palm that's facing away from you. It's just putting more tension and more stress on your bicep tendon. I've seen people, not in person, but I've seen videos of people tear their bicep from that grip. So for most people, I'm not a huge fan of that grip either. So for you, if you want to not use straps or grips, then I would try and work on the hook grip. Or if you don't want to do that, then I would just use straps or grips. Nothing wrong with using straps or grips, especially if you are selling yourself short on deadlift gains or posterior chain strength, overall body strength gains, because your grip is your limiter. And that really goes for any lift that grip is limiting you on. I've heard people say, like, I'm doing split squats with dumbbells in my hands for my legs, and I want to go heavier, but I just can't grip the dumbbells for long enough to do a set of however many reps to build my legs. And to me, it sounds like pretty common sense. Like, okay, well, what could we do to not make grip a limiting factor? Oh, we could use things that they make specifically to make grip not a limiting factor, like straps or grips. So that's what I would use for a lift like that. But even things like rows or deadlifts or anything else that you want to build a certain set of musculature, or you want to build strength in a certain movement, but grip is limiting you, then using straps and grips is a great idea. And then training grip separately. A lot of people think like, oh no, just don't use grips because then you get grip training and also you get to train your musculature. Which, okay, I get that. There is definitely a school of thought and there's definitely a time and place for doing things like that if you have specific issues. But also, you could train your grip separately. Just like you're not trying to build, say, your glutes and your lower back and your upper back when you're doing specific grip work, you're trying to build your grip. You don't necessarily have to try and build your grip when you're doing posterior chain work. You could do those things separately. And that's kind of what I'd recommend, especially here when deadlifting is limited a lot, in your words, by your grip. So any of those techniques can work really well. And then train your grip separately. Carries, captains of crushed grippers, dead hangs, plate pinches, any number of different things, forearm training. All those work pretty well, and you will see your deadlift go up, and also probably as a result of just being stronger in general because you're deadlifting more because you're not limited by your grip, you'll be able to train your grip more and improve your grip more, and still you won't have to necessarily think of it when you're going to deadlifts because you just have your grip taken care of, and you can get stronger grip in other things. And likely, coincidentally, holding a deadlift bar, double overhand, is not really that specific to the things most people want to improve their grip on. So, if you want to be able to carry things for longer, like you're going to selection, yeah, you can definitely get some carryover grip strength by doing double overhand deadlifts and holding it for a long period of time at the top, but you're much better off just using straps or grips for that, or hook grip, and training grip separately. So that would be my approach on that one. All right, next and last question. Progression for getting back into training after getting selected. Relatively healthy now. Congrats on making it. If you went on the last class, it was definitely a bloodbath. So good on you. And good on you for thinking about getting back into training. Because believe it or not, some guys get selected and they think the work is over. Or maybe they don't think the work is over, but their actions suggest that they think the work is over. And they just kind of like, oh, I've arrived. We're good. So good on you. And now that you're feeling healthy, really getting ready for the Q course is probably a good idea. You don't necessarily have to train super specifically for the Q course like you did for SFAS. You just want a good general base of fitness. Unless, of course, you have some sort of event that you know is coming up that is going to take some specific training. Like, for example, if you show up and you want to, maybe some classes do this, like depending on PT scores, those guys will get to start certain things a little bit earlier. If you have a higher PT score, you'll have, more free reign to start the Q course faster than other guys. It's always different, so don't hold me to that. But say you want to get a 600 in the ACFT. I'm not a huge fan of training specifically for the ACFT, but if you can identify a couple of things that you are weaker at and train those a little bit more often, especially as it gets closer, or AFT, whatever it's called, then that'd be a good idea, because it is a more unique case where you're kind of getting a little bit of special treatment for doing really, really well and crushing that. But overall, it should be just general fitness. I would say anything from hopping on T850, that is pretty much tailored for Q course students. Like, of course, different parts of the Q course are going to require different types of training, and you're going to have different training capabilities throughout different parts of the Q course. But for like Q course fitness maintenance, T850 would be a great option. There's a free 1-week trial on that too, so you can hop on, try it for a week, and see if you like it. If not, no hard feelings. If you like it, then you can continue on it, and then you can drop off it anytime you go out to Camp McCall for a long time, like when you go to SUT or whatever it is. Or you could do Jackazel 2.0, or you could do Jackazel, or you could do the 2 and 5 mile if you're a little weaker at running. But honestly, I'm starting to call the 2 and 5 mile a hybrid program these days, because a lot of people are getting strong on it too, even though it's supposed to be just a running program. Clearly there's hybrid undertones in it. So any of those programs be a good idea, but in general, you just want to start rebuilding your general fitness base, kind of working on some things that you might deem as your weaknesses. Some people will get told to work on things in their out processing or their out brief from selection, whether they make it or not. Some guys make it and they're like, hey, you better come to the Q course with this, this, and this taken care of. Some guys are like, oh, I absolutely crushed it. In that case, just getting back into a reasonable routine, good blend of conditioning and strength, and just staying healthy. That's probably the biggest thing. Even though you do feel good and relatively healthy and well recovered, you still want to be a little bit cautious getting back into it and not just go way too hard way too soon. Just general fitness advice. But I would say that's kind of the mindset I would go in with it, and those programs can give you a good template to follow if you're interested. And yeah, that's the last question, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in as always, and thank you for your continued support. Really appreciate you. Hope everyone had an awesome 4th, and I will be back soon with another episode. Till then, Terminator out.